Hello and welcome to a Suzi's Books Bag Extra, a mini, if you will. I'm talking today about this newly published biography of Nick Drake. What an absolute whopper it is. Lovely picture of Nick on the front, smiling, quite a rare sight. I did review this book for The Spectator, but there's a lot more to say, as you can imagine, with a book of that size. And it was very interesting to compare it with this much earlier biography by Patrick Humphreys. And just the difference in the story between the two is very interesting, worth remarking on, I think. I am a Nick Drake super fan, long loved the music, found the songs incredibly bewitching and magical and unfathomable in a way. So the question is, do we find out any more about the work from looking at the life of the artist? And well, the first thing to say is it's a very, very sad story indeed. I went into a bit of a slump after reading this huge book. Nick Drake, The Life, it's published by John Murray, and it's by Richard Morton Jack. And the big difference, I guess, between the two really is the amount of collaboration with Nick Drake's surviving sister, Gabrielle, who's obviously smoothed the way, opened up family archives, I think, is the main thing. Apart from that, a lot of the same people have been interviewed for both. And in fact, Richard Morton Jack does credit Patrick Humphreys with sharing some of his notes, because some of the people that Patrick Humphreys was able to interview back in '97 when his book came out, they are no longer with us. And so that's the thing to say about anybody writing about Nick Drake, is that he would have been 75, I think, in June. So time's running out, really, to get the first-hand memories. So there's not, I suppose this is about twice the size of this. It looks much bigger, but this is in very small type. So how does the story change? In its broad outlines, not much at all. There's just much more detail that has been trawled up in the latest biography. To what end? I mean, what sort of detail matters? There's a lot more. A lot of people have been dug up to talk, not literally dug up, to talk about him. And in some ways, the picture is less romantic, and I think that's understandable. It's so easy to over romanticize somebody like Nick Drake and see that his sad end is akin to being a romantic poet. You know, poor Nick, he wasn't appreciated by anybody in his life, and the world was harsh. He fell upon the thorns of life and all that sort of thing. And I found myself having a rather different impression, certainly from reading about the last years of his life. And I was really struggling with the urge to kind of scream down the decades, you know, snap out of it, Nick, come on. You know, obviously you can't do that with somebody who is as ill as he was. But before he was even ill, he was very disinclined to get out and about, make friends. I mean, people liked him, but he had this incredible distance and aloofness and remoteness. So what was I really expecting from the biography? One thing it doesn't do, and I think the Humphreys does do quite well, is just to explain some of the songs, to actually talk about what really matters, which is not his moods and his problems and his struggles, but the amazing work that came out of it. It's still rather mysterious. There's not, sometimes you study the life, if you look at something like Richard Holmes's Shelley the Pursuit, he weaves wonderfully what was being written when, and what the influences were, and what the what the developments in the art, you know, how they tie to incidents in the life. We don't really get any of that in Nick Drake, The Life. So I was quite intrigued to hear more, to read more about his school life and also his university life. You know, there are kind of reports on his dreaminess, his Mona Lisa smile, his just vague otherworldliness, and his complete lack of any. You know, he wasn't going to commit to his studies in any persistent or systematic way. He obviously read an awful lot. I think that comes out in the lyrics. And I suppose what I was quite shocked by is given the era, possibly shouldn't have been shocked, but the efforts that were made to get this kid into Cambridge when he didn't seem to be academic at all, the heavy lifting and pulling, the you know, the insider dealing and the friend of a friend, and I know somebody and I'll put in a good word, and for somebody who sort of didn't really value it and didn't really care, is really quite sad. I couldn't help thinking of the many kids out there at the time who probably would have loved to go to Cambridge and would have got a great deal out of it and didn't have the contacts, didn't have people pulling strings for them. Mute, inglorious Nick Drakes, if you will. Having said that, there's no doubt it's a good thing that he did get into Cambridge, even if he kind of wasted the opportunity, because he met important musical collaborators there, and you know, he was a genius. He was a genius. I can't really say that it was an outrage that he was let in. I just feel that there must have been a lot of other people equally deserving who did not get that chance. Be that as it may, it also underlined the decision to leave Cambridge without taking a degree. And I think it positions this. I think he studied for 2 years, and then the musical career, with the help of these collaborators, the work he was doing on his songs, the musical career was going to take off. And he legged it. He legged it to London, having met Joe Boyd, the producer. And the result, of course, is the wonderful Cambridge-tinged Five Leaves Left, the debut album. But I think this book positions that as the first in a series of decisions that, just like dominoes toppling over one after another, ended up having very serious and depressing consequences for Nick Drake. Incidentally, I was thinking of the song Riverman, and the reference to going to see the Riverman, going to tell him what I can about the plan for lilac time, I think it goes. I've always thought lilac time sounded like exam time. For me, it was when the cherry blossom came out. I always associated that with exams. So I wondered if the Riverman was possibly his tutor, and he was being summoned to say, you know, look, you haven't done any work. What is your plan for the upcoming exams? I have no idea if that is the case, but if that is part of what's behind that, it just shows the amazing way that you can universalize and raise an experience, a personal experience, make it dreamy and mystical, and make it part of a song that will really live forever. So who knows? What else? Yeah, he then came to London, and he started to do lots of gigs, and there's a lot more detail about the gigs that he did, and there's a lot more detail about the people who did help and did support and did appreciate what an extraordinary performer he was. So the kind of Keatsian you know, nobody appreciated how great he was, doesn't quite hold. Actually, a lot of people appreciated Keats as well. So yes, there was something in Nick Drake that didn't seem able to take advantage of many opportunities held out, decisions that he made. I mean, he had this wonderful stubbornness. He wasn't a pushover. People were using words like meek, but I think there's more to it than that. But I think as the decisions that, maybe not bad decisions, decisions that didn't turn out well, as they accumulated and piled on top of one another, it just added to a difficult and depressing situation that he doesn't seem to have been able, he wasn't able to pull himself out of. So there's, I mean, there's some things in this that aren't in Nick Drake the Life. It can feel, Nick Drake the Life can feel like absolutely every single day that can be chronicled, has been chronicled. But still, there were a few things I was hoping to find that weren't overly elaborated in here, and I thought there might be more. One of the, just to talk about the photographs a little, I think that's a Keith Morris photograph on the cover there. Keith Morris, he did many wonderful pictures of Nick, including the ones for the albums. Is one of the people who is not with us anymore. So in the opening, the flyleaf, is that the flyleaf? There's these rather lovely contact sheet prints of Nick Drake as a little boy, very smiley, chubby faced boy, very cute. And then the back, there's a very different set of contact prints from Keith Morris, and that's the last, the very last photo shoot when Nick really wasn't very well. I keep calling him Nick like I know him. I you sort of get like that. You identify so much with the songs and the persona, I guess. And there is a lovely anecdote in from Keith Morris in this earlier biography, and it's connected with a really lovely, a very emblematic photo of Nick Drake going down a lane towards the ponds in Hampstead, and a dog, a Labrador, has just come around the corner, is looking up at him, and he's not interacting with the dog at all. And in the Nick Drake biography by Patrick Humphreys, says the story behind that. Somebody had brought a dog along. Most people will respond to a friendly dog, and Nick Drake kind of didn't. So there is this, I think, I probably won't be able to find it now, but there's a reference to, I think Nick liked the dog, you know, he didn't really show it. It's a very haunting picture of Nick Drake walking away, inaccessible, not looking at us, heading off into his dark future. So other pictures that there are in here, there are some interesting pictures of his home where, you know, he went, having failed in London, he felt, he retreated back home to live with his parents. And there's some interesting pictures of the house, very 70s looking decor. It was the 70s. I thought this was kind of curious. As a picture of a kitchen. Nick would occasionally make himself a snack when he couldn't sleep, which just seems quite a banal thing to caption, but there is a sort of deeper meaning behind that. Many pictures of friends. I could have done with more pictures of Nick Drake himself, but there's lots and lots of pictures of friends who have contributed their thoughts. And for a book that seems to say, you know, look, we've got every single detail here, it's all between these two covers, there's one extraordinary moment It's very well known. I mean, he doesn't seem to have had a sex life of any description. There's a girlfriend mentioned here who used to sit on his knee, who was described as the nearest thing he ever got to a girlfriend, but even that didn't go very far. And you know, there's no real evidence of any libido, actually, and as all of his friends say, no particular evidence that he was gay. There's just nothing doing. Quite extraordinary. So he was somebody that people flipped for, and women flipped for, and thought he was absolutely adorable, but there was nothing doing. And yet, about 200 pages in, you get this statement in the text: Nick was not a virgin. What? Explain. What's going on there? Like, it just seems an extraordinary thing to just drop in without saying any more about that. I don't know whether this is the girlfriend who sat on his lap who's refusing to stay anymore, or somebody else, or there's no kind of citation. It just seems an extraordinary thing to drop in. Something of such significance from somebody who wrote extraordinary, longing love songs. Would have liked to have known a little bit more about that, for sure. And I suppose the final days are set out in more detail, with some little flickers of hope. No real warning of what was about to happen, and there are more details than seem to have been furnished to Patrick Humphreys about what did happen at the end. It's a very, very tragic story, but I've always been struck by we go back to that kitchen and making yourself a snack in the night. I've always been struck by the fact that he got up apparently and had a bowl of cereal. And I sort of thought, who does that? Who has a bowl of cereal and then decides they're going to end it all? It seemed very strange to me. And from reading this, I thought, well, you know, maybe somebody who wants to line their stomach would do that. And there's a strange ghostly presence in the book also, which is of the person who found his body. Actually found his body was a housekeeper, from Burma, as was Nick was born in Burma. And there's really not much more about her. She seems to have lived in the home and worked for the family, but it's like a sort of strange little ghost. Person I'd love to have known a little bit more about, if there's anything more to know. Kieran Pym, the biography, is just an excellent biography of Joseph Roth. He did a review in, I think, The Guardian, and he took as his line, "Do you curse where you come from?" as unlocking something about Nick Drake, of him being stifled by his background, his upper class, very posh background. I mean, he has such a posh voice when he's singing. You can really hear this this gentle accent coming out. Yars, he talks about yars. I mean, sings about one point. I was more struck actually by something that Gabriel Drake has obviously facilitated, which is the letters from the parents, despairing letters, really trying to reach out and connect and help. I found them very, very touching, not cloying or overbearing in any way. It just adds to the absolute sadness and tragedy of this whole story of somebody that it's just impossible to help. It really, it was a bit of a downer, I have to say. I did feel quite down after reading this book. It certainly underlines the pain for everybody else around the ill person, the despair. And what eventually happened seems to have shocked everyone, but not surprised them. And all you can really do is go back to the amazing music, which I did. And maybe it's a good thing that the mystery is still there, the extraordinary disconnect between this person and what they were able to achieve. So that's the happy end of the story, and the music will live on. Thanks for watching.